Good morning and happy Monday, LinkedIn friends. Welcome to day 6 of our Value First Framework series. I'm Chris Carolyn and I'm here with Bill Barlas. How you doing today, Bill?
I'm doing absolutely excellent, Chris. Nice Monday morning here in sunny Wisconsin. How about
Sunny
you?
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Looks like we got some sun out here down in the Woodlands, Texas. We're going to need it, honestly, as we dive into this topic that's not so sunny. You know, might be the most universally experienced trap in our entire series. Hard to say that with all of the other traps, but oh man, let's try this on for size, Bill. Imagine you're in a meeting where someone suggests maybe we should look at replacing our ERP system. What happens in that room?
Well, Chris, I think we've all been in the room, and usually it's a painful silence, um, followed by followed by you know somebody maybe executive level, maybe sort of mid management saying, uh, "Kindly let's table that for now." Um, not really something that not really something we're going to be able to do. So. Um, Change means utter pain, so
Yeah, and it's
that part is left silent, but yeah.
if we're being nice about it, if everybody's being professional. I think we've all heard much worse.
Mhm.
Um, and that's what we call the ERP trap. Yeah, using ERP kind of as like a banner SaaS category here. But really what we're talking about is enterprise systems that started as reasonable solutions just to coordinate a bunch of people, a bunch of things, a bunch of processes. They've become digital straitjackets that everyone fears to challenge. And today we're going to show you how to recognize this trap and, more importantly, how to challenge it first and then maybe transform your platform thinking. Um, and so, what does it look like? I mean, I think we all know what it feels like, but it can be hard to put into words like why it's so immovable. Um, and like the rest of Value First, this comes from like the whole goal of Value First is to move from industrial age mindsets that aren't really positioned well, built well, agile enough for an age of AI where we are seeing change on a weekly basis right now. Um, and so we have separate systems, for everything, a bunch of manual overhead. We either integrate systems, with elaborate, uh, tool solutions or people. People are hanging on to both systems. They're manually entering data all over the place. Um, and uh, it's not pretty. It's not pretty, man.
Yeah, absolutely. For
What are
sure.
you seeing? What do you see in practice when you can see people, in this trap?
Yeah, absolutely. So the the first one is we see teams and organizations continuing to implement, trying to make it better with sort of it's what you were describing, sort of a broken premise, right? So implementations that are increasing the overhead required for coordination between teams, departments, groups in an organization. Um, Integration, right? So integrations that are actually causing more of a fragmented result. Um, Another one that is super common is seeing people being forced into using systems that were designed because of how the computer wants to work, not because of how a person wants to work, right? So designed around a database structure, not around how the user wants to work. Um, and then the last one is, so even if you have an integrated system, are you really enabling collaboration, or are you connecting two softwares together? Right. So, if you've got sales and operations and they have a handover that's about to happen for a sold solution, um, how do we enable that collaboration between those two teams to make it seamless? So,
Yeah. And what we see, over and over is that there's initial promise of simplification of some sort.
mhm,
I mean, especially when ERPs haven't been implemented before and you're focused on customer experience and serving the customer, you do what you got to do internally. Um, and it gets to chaos. Like it's very quickly that, you know, because you have um, long tenured folks, usually they can handle the chaos because everything's just coming right out of their head. But as soon as you try and grow and scale, you know, uh, things start falling through the cracks. Other people don't have that tribal knowledge. So you try and like rein in the chaos and say it's going to be simplified, right? Because we'll have systems that we can count on, right? And then 6 months later, we see more steps for everything, more approvals for everything, more confusion internally, which leads to just a frictionful journey for the customers on the other side, right? And it's not hard to find people saying things like, "It's just not. It doesn't feel like the system doesn't work the way that we work." Right? Why am I having to put the data in? Like, if I didn't have the system, and sometimes you'll see it in the paper processes, right, where the real communication is happening. I
mhm,
think we have some benefit of coming from industrial manufacturing because this is still, prevalent and it's not easy to go remote in a lot of cases. So there's still a lot of people in office doing things. And you can see how how this can get out of hand in terms of, okay, we got a system over here that we have to put data in eventually, but it's not helping us, do our job, right? It's helping, leadership maybe, and that's about it. Just keep track of things. Probably helping the operations team, like the non-customer facing people,
mhm.
which is often the reason that we get into these things. But then we have customer facing teams having to work out of these systems, not designed for them. So they develop just these, masterful workarounds sometimes, or really like putting the customer experience on their back with the amount of like PDFing and like screenshotting and then marking up the screenshots and then sending that and then saving that and printing it out. Sometimes it's,
Mhm.
oh man, it's rough to watch, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, we see examples of that all over the place. Um, I recently ran into one which um, we were working on a system and we had to do all of these super elaborate unit of measure calculations, which all basically resulted in the same outcome, but they had to be reported a certain way into the ERP because the line items on a sales order had to be a certain way for the order to be processed. And so that's something that's on the inside sales team at this organization to deal with. And so they've been manually, they've got a little spreadsheet on the side and they do the calculation and then key in the different values. Um, you know, over the course of years, how much time have they lost by not reevaluating that process? It's monumental. So, and we see quite a lot of other things around that. It's all sort of related. It's a user interface designed for administrators, designed because the system has to work a certain way, but it's not designed for users. Um, and
It's not
it,
designed for
it's
change either,
no, no,
right?
exactly.
And like
It's
Man,
designed for a set of reports that had to be a certain way because the spreadsheet report was that way, and
yeah.
we don't even know why we're doing it that way anymore. So, yeah.
And that's the first time I've said it that way. But just think about how, like in this world right now, where AI and platforms like HubSpot and lots of software platforms, like new platforms, small teams doing big things, like we are moving on a week by week, like change pace right now. And you have a system not built for change. Like, think about that. Think about what that does to your team, right? And these are all the mounting costs because your team is witnessing and experiencing this change, on their own as customers outside of your business, but also from customers coming to your business, right? Experiencing that change themselves. So change orders and where's my order, and all these things where they got to change addresses, they got to do all this stuff, and it's next to impossible in some cases to do it cleanly. So you have everybody writing down everything. But like the mounting costs that we see, the implementation costs, highly related to our session with Aaron on Friday. Managed services contracts. That's like, sorry, you can't keep track of the system yourself. So I guess you're paying indefinitely for customization and maintenance. Operationally, business agility constrained by system limitations. Like so many good ideas go to die because we can't do it in this system, or it would cost too much money, or it would take too long. And what this leads to is worst of all, most insidious of all, because this impacts so many things in the business, is building a culture of learned helplessness where people assume that the systems decide like what can and can't happen, right? That I've got to adapt as a human being just because of the system that we've chosen, you know. And I, I could go on, but curious to hear about like some things you've seen, Bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, in previous life, I worked on Microsoft AX, which is like a way back in the day. I think it was like a 2008 version of AX, which was all. It wasn't green screen, but it was mighty close, right? And we were making. They were like plumbing products of some kind, and drains and things, right? And um, we had all of these crazy bill of materials requirements around how the drains got screwed together and built. Um, and we actually had an engineer spend, I think it was over a year, programming every single little bill of materials iteration possible into this manufacturing configurator, right? And there was another person who was charged with 80/20, right? So like a Pareto, lean manufacturing simplification project for SKUs, right? And um, I don't know about your plumbing company, but at my plumbing company, the 80/20 rule was actually effective. But we couldn't sell the frickin' SKUs properly because we had to use this stupid manufacturing configurator to get them in as line items. You had to. So so like there was no way to properly do a SKU based sale of these things. And um, it's probably still like that. It's probably
Yeah.
still like that
And
there.
that's the sad part, right? Like,
Yeah.
and people like, it can be easy, especially in SaaS, to like throw shade on the salesperson who doesn't want to use the CRM or go into the ERP. This is why. Like, they can quote that stuff no problem.
Hmm.
Like,
On their email. Here you
right?
go. Yeah.
And like when they literally cannot do the thing, especially in the worst cases, 3 or 4 weeks to get a quote
Yeah.
because we got to contact overseas to get,
Yeah.
part information and pricing. And it's, you lose deals, and salespeople don't like losing deals for
Mhm.
things like that.
I don't like
Right.
losing deals at all. Right. Exactly.
And then as we think about the whole process, like, guess what leads to overpromising,
Hmm.
right? We're promising the thing that maybe we're not ready for, maybe we can't do yet,
Yeah.
right? And it's just a predictable pattern that has been amazing to me that we have not been able to solve, you know? Um, and that's again behind value first is what have we been doing for 25 years plus that we are unable to break free from all these traps? Um, because this pattern, organizations need coordination, they need systems, they need process, they need standardization where they can get it, right? So they implement ERP for control, business processes become rigid, innovation slows, competitive disadvantage grows because you have newcomers that aren't chained to these systems, especially now with AI involved. Small teams competing with very, very big teams. Uh, and, on the big teams, you still have everybody afraid to change. Um, Hopefully, we can help you not fear change here and just understand like how to think and talk about this stuff in proactive ways. Uh, and one of the ways we want to do that is what I call the need framework, right? Just to confirm, and this is why just establishing current state is just so important. Make sure everybody's on the same page for how detrimental like this truly is, but also how common sense the path out like is, right? Um, so need stands for natural, enhanced, elevated, and distributed. And we've got one question for each that we're going to go through. First one being natural collaboration versus artificial control. Does your platform enable natural collaboration or require artificial control?
Yeah. Absolutely. I'd like to take this one. So we were just talking about the plumbing company that had the issue with the sales orders, right? That that's an example of artificial control. It was also just bad design. So sorry about that to the people out there still working on it. Um, but I have a different example. I saw a case study not that long ago. I was at a Milwaukee Hug HubSpot user group, um, and I saw this team. This was the first time that I really understood sort of the end and need. Um, the team was using Service Hub for their ticketing, right? And they had all of these little reports, like a little piecemeal reports they were using to run their operations on a daily basis, and all of these analytics and all these things, and they were using every single piece of the Service Hub product, basically, not really even to the limit, but like they were using it properly. And what using it properly looked like, and I finally understood this after watching how they were doing it. And they were working live, like we were watching them do this. Um, they they will change their system, their HubSpot Service Hub implementation as the business changes. They're not afraid to add a field, make an adjustment, stop using something, redo their reporting. These are things that in a previous life would be terrifying concepts. So they were changing how the software worked in real time to meet the changing needs of their department. And I think it was like 11 or 12 service reps, and the service reps were allowed to say things like, "This isn't working for me. How do we make this better?" And rather than hitting a wall, they were adjusting things. And I think part of it is because the manager that was in charge of the service team was also sort of doing the HubSpot administration. But when you have a tool as easy to use and administer as HubSpot, that's possible. So it really it's sort of like it's a human and computer based mixed system where you're allowed to adjust your software. It's not us and them anymore. So
Yes.
that's yeah,
It's natural collaboration,
yes,
right?
correct.
And so much of this artificial control comes from the digital systems. Like when you see people working with paper, that's very natural, right?
Yes.
They're just writing stuff down, they're grabbing a post-it, they're doing all the stuff, whatever's in process, and they hand it to the next person. They could be live on the call, then it like flows, right?
Yep.
And like the reality is we can build our systems to support that. It's just we rarely do. Um, Number two here, the first E, enhanced human capability versus dependency maintenance. Are your people becoming more capable or more dependent on system administrators? Oh man. Uh, I mean, the example you just gave, like hit again, right? Like, and so much of this is again what we had to do to build complex systems back in the day required teams of IT admins and like system administrators and but this is at the heart of why, for example, a Salesforce admin is much different from a HubSpot admin, right? Where we need people on the front lines to have some process ownership, right? To be able to self-service, to be able to understand and use and grow into the platform that they're being asked to use, versus the centralized technical control, which almost always creates key person risk of
Mhm.
some sort, right? And it really, again, like it reinforces the learned helplessness. Like, oh, I gotta go. I can't do anything. Like one of my favorite things to show people, and I'm guessing it's progressed since then, but like the simple ability to manage views, your own views easily, like in HubSpot versus other systems where it's not at all like that. It's a huge win from a user
Mhm.
perspective, right? Uh, what have you seen from a system dependency or empowerment situation?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the views is something I was thinking about that as you said it. I think that actually is a very big one, right? We rolled that out in some other software that I do some maintenance with, and I didn't, in working with customers, I didn't realize how big of an impact that would have, right? Um, and I think any time that you have to make a request to a third party team who is in charge of so many things, I think IT teams are literally so overburdened at the moment. Um, I think anytime you have to make a request to a team like that, you're already SOL basically, and it's more organizationally. I mean, not not as an individual team. So it's really a matter of how can we shift responsibility for day-to-day administration into the team itself so that they're able to make adjustments on the fly, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that leads us to the second E, which is elevated value creation versus process optimization. Are
Yeah.
you creating breakthrough business capabilities or just optimizing existing constraints? Um, and oh man, uh, one example that comes to mind is I remember being on a call um, about an ERP view, which was the order confirmation view. And for ages, uh, up until this point, a couple years ago, it did not have email address on the view as a form. And this is where hopefully, like, we just need you to we're trying to help you speak up, right, about these things and maybe present them in, more productive ways. Obviously, 2023, we're emailing everything, and we need to manage email addresses in relationship to order confirmations, especially as we think about integrating a system like HubSpot. And we're on the call, and the IT leaders, says something like, "Well, we just haven't changed that form in a long time." And I have to be the guy that said, "Okay, let's change it then." Like, because we haven't changed it in a long time isn't a good reason, not to move forward,
Yeah.
as if the process is already, optimized in some way, right? But I get it because every change request has to go in the IT queue, and you have change management needs, and is it that easy to fix or not? Right? Usually it's not, so that's why people don't, speak up.
Mhm.
Um, but the amount of time it would take people to manage that email address because they could not have it on the form, that adds up, and that's what leads to, the customer experience disadvantage, that you create. From a maintenance perspective, ongoing, uh, what is I'd love to hear an example of things that people optimize that maybe they just should not do anymore.
Hmm.
Put you on the spot there.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're asking is, what are we where is our managed service spend going that maybe it doesn't need to be going towards things like that, right?
It could be. Yeah, at the heart of it, like, again, value first, not only moving from industrial to AI age, but also from a mindset of optimization to a mindset of transformation,
Yeah.
right? And the easiest example I like to target is trying to bring a paper-based process, like, into, like, a really high class, complex digital system, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, and I think the other thing is it's evaluation of processes that have already sort of grown up with your organization. So, if you have a certain way of, you know, I keep going back to orders, but that's because that's one of the main human interfaces between sales and operations, right? That's where the handoff happens, right? And so it's really important. So, I think an area where we've seen a lot of time and energy spent by both technology teams and the people using the tools is in this sort of like order entry area, right? And so I think a frank evaluation of how that currently works and really stepping back and saying, is this actually necessary? What we're doing, is it actually necessary the way that we're doing it? I think would be an extremely, that's one where, we're talking a lot about, can we transform this completely rather than continuing to work on the code for this entry form, right? That's the probably in my mind one of the biggest areas for opportunity. So yeah.
And it's a huge opportunity because all those people on the front lines, they it's tough when you hear leaders suggest that their value is limited to data entry because that's all they've shown
Hmm.
the capability to do because you put them there,
Yep.
because that's what you're asking them to do. And every time they speak up, there's no point for them to try and do more. Um, and it gets us to the D in need, which is distributed empowerment, versus centralized dependencies. Do successful approaches spread naturally, or do they require centralized management? And in most all cases, and I get it, there's a need for a centralization, but that's usually the overcorrection that we see related to ERP specifically, because it's about the money, right? You got to
Yep.
make sure the money's right. Got to make sure the profitability is there, the margin's there. But so often we restrict you know, like salespeople, like on the fly in conversation, are always doing margin calculations, like in their head. And sometimes they are prevented from making things better because of the system that they have to like input everything into. And obviously, this is a double-edged sword when you create flexibility, you bring new people in, right? But you can build systems now that can create that level of empowerment while having, monitors and controls on the system, right? It just requires some balance. Um, and when you have all this change, especially on the front lines, your teams have to be like when you create independence for them to make split-second decisions when serving customers, you can see it. Like you see it for customer experience, you see it
Mhm.
in the internal experience. It creates wow moments all the time in terms of, internal people helping each other, but also, surprise and delight from the customer perspective,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, it's that how did you get back to me so fast experience that we're always trying to give, you know. It's like, oh, I liked working with them. I want to do that again. You know, that's always what we're going for. So, and you know that I think that does, you know, that team using HubSpot that way, it is the perfect example for the need framework, you know, versus teams that are sort of it's not having that tension between the team responsible for administering the tool and the team responsible for using it. You know, giving you know pre-sale organizations and support organizations um, more of like a framework and a set of capabilities and saying, okay, go and do your job with these, rather than saying this is prescribed, this is how you have to do it, right? So yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough. And like usually I have like a long list of like false solutions that people come up with, related to all the traps. But this one always comes back to just optimizing within the system that you don't even like,
Mhm.
right? And we're just adding integrations, we're building workarounds, we're building new data flows. We're hiring more people to support it all instead of trying to remove it. Instead of thinking about it differently. Uh, so we're going to get into how you can think about it differently, and uh, and I think it helps to start like just imagine that you could say these things by the end of this year. These are the value first platform principles, the 7 commitments that transform infrastructure from control to enablement. Number 1, we will build liberating environments, not controlling systems. We believe technology should expand possibilities rather than limit them through structural constraints. Number 2, we will connect naturally, not force artificial integration. We believe value flows most effectively through natural connections, not forced pathways determined by system architecture. Number 3, we will evolve continuously, not replace periodically. We believe sustainable platforms grow and adapt alongside the organization rather than requiring disruptive replacement cycles. Number 4, we will augment human capability, not replace human judgment. We believe technology should amplify what humans do best while handling what machines do better. Number 5, we will liberate knowledge, not trap it in specialization. We believe information and capabilities should be accessible without special expertise requirements. Number 6, we will enable natural organization, not enforce artificial structure. We believe teams naturally organize around shared purpose when barriers are removed. And number 7, we will measure value flow, not just system utilization. We believe success comes from enabling natural value creation, not just efficient system use. What
And
any of those resonate
yeah,
with you, Bill?
I really, that the sum total of those statements is that it lets you mirror a successful platform optimization. Like that. This is how you can have sort of continuous change and optimization inside of your tech stack, inside of your human stack, I guess you could say. Um, so it you can let the platforms evolve with how your business needs to run, right? Um, so yeah, it makes more human and naturally enabled workflows, and making very complex ideas more simple for the people actually needing to execute on them. So yeah.
Yeah. And so much of this is about just letting the value flow, right? We build so many things in the way of that. So let's help you with some practical ideas for implementation. Uh, for someone listening or watching who recognizes these patterns, here's somewhere you can start. Oh, we always come back to the mapping. I'm sorry. Like, you got to understand your process, how people internally and externally move through it. Uh, But in this case, we want you to focus on the value, like the valuable activities, right? And this includes, no matter how painful it might be to watch, like, back to one of our, principles about it not being just about efficient system use, right? Salespeople will undergo an immense amount of pain, right? Of emails, of document generation, of calling and calling again, because they know that will work, like, for their process. And you have to understand why
Mhm.
they think it works and why it does work, right? So understanding how information and decisions actually get done, how they move through the organization,
Yeah,
not how your system says they should move.
exactly. Yeah, so as you're auditing, you're looking for where are the artificial workflow enhancements, or like where like what why are you doing something to like enforce a policy, right? Why is that happening? Is it because you actually have a business policy or a business rule, or is it because you have a system that can only work that way, right? Those understanding and documenting those is really the first step, you know. So
Yeah, because so much of that is like leads to enforcement, leads to like just lack of system usage, leads to bad data, and then it starts to circle. And now we have systems in place for years that nobody uses and cost a bunch of money, right? Um, so start these conversations about platform thinking rather than system replacement. Uh, it really involves an evolutionary transformation here because we got to maintain business continuity, right? Um, but we can't get that and we can't let that get in the way of more natural workflows, right? We've got to find ways to enable and grow into uh, this age of AI.
exactly, exactly. So yeah.
So I think, like, starting with, and if you don't know, if you don't, like, ask your people,
Mhm.
right? Ask the frontline people. They will
Yeah,
tell
exactly.
you where the high leverage workflows are, the things that they do that are least valuable versus most valuable,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, your
designed.
team knows. Your team
Yeah,
knows. They're aware, right? So it's
and they've probably been telling you for a very long time,
yeah, and
right?
they'll
It's
tell you
just
again.
so the only thing that has made sense to me, Bill, is like, all of this is common sense. We must be trapped somehow. So that's like the whole program is like, how can we break free
Yeah.
from this mindset? And that's why there's 10 pillars. I mean, I don't think any longer, we can get away with we can't boil the ocean,
Hmm.
right? You're going to get boiled if
Yeah.
that's the case, right?
Yes, I would agree. It's time. It's here. So
And as soon as
make
you
this happen.
can like transition to platform and understand that it's the whole thing, right? All of a sudden it starts to be a little more comfortable in that everybody's dealing with this right now. It's not just you that needs to handle the change of the age of AI. It's everybody trying to move out of this. And there's so much leverage and differentiation to be had for the companies that take these steps forward. So as we close, here's the diagnostic question. And it should be this simple. I know it's not, but just start here and then like design a path, right? If you could redesign your business processes from scratch today, how different would they look from what your current systems require? And if you're being honest, it will immediately reveal whether you are enabling transformation or you have systems in place that prevent it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to close from my perspective, I would say that the best platform implementations are ones that make business easier and make the evolution of your business, as we're seeing this rapid change, easier over time, not harder. And that's when you're sort of using that's how you'll know then that you're using a platform based thinking model, rather than just managing your system from a day-to-day basis. So yeah.
Yep. And, a common question is like, okay, well, how do we measure progress? Tomorrow, we're going to explore the measurement trap with Danielle Urban, looking at how metrics can enable natural value flow rather than forcing artificial attribution. Because right now we're forcing a lot of artificial attribution. And again, it makes it hard to break free when all the KPIs are based on the system of old. But today, start map where platform thinking could transform your organizational workflows and get your front line involved, please. Um, they have a lot of experience and can point you exactly where you need to go. Share your experiences in the comments. Where have you seen systems constraining business innovation? What steps have you taken to enable more natural workflows? What steps would you like to take? Your insights will help others recognize these patterns in their own organization and maybe even yours if somebody else in your organization sees you say it in that way. Uh, Valuable as always, Bill. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It was great, Chris. Thank you.
Everybody have a great week, and we will see you tomorrow.